Good morning, everyone. My name is Mpho Mabala from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. I'm attached to Biosecurity Directorate, and the sub-directorate is Issuing Authority. So we're mainly responsible for the issuing of permits. We are based in Cape Town. Our office is based in Cape Town. So this morning, I will be presenting on our alien invasive species permitting process in terms of the alien and invasive species regulation of 2020. Moving to the next slide. During my presentation, I'll be touching on the following. I will be looking at NEMA, which is National Environmental Biodiversity Act of 2004, together with its associated regulation, Alien and Invasive Species Regulation of 2020. I'll be answering the question of why our permits issued. I'll also be looking at the kinds of restricted activities that we issue permits for. I'll also be talking to risk assessment, which is part and parcel of the entire permit application process itself. And I'll be looking at permit application process. Lastly, I'll be talking to the prescribed fees for lodging an application. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, as most of us know, Section 24 of our Constitution states that everyone has got a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health, and to have that environment protected, not only for the present generation, but for the future generation as well. So one of the legal instrument that was developed to give effect to this right was the Alien Invasive Species Regulation of 2020. So this regulation came into effect on the 1st of October 2014. They were amended in 2020 and became effect as from the 1st of March. As we know, we are sitting with a big problem with alien invasive species because they pose a great threat to our livelihoods as well as to biodiversity globally, and that is because they are highly competitive as compared to our indigenous species. So they have capability to replace our indigenous species. So that's why it's very important to manage and control them. Therefore, the purpose of this regulation is to prevent the legal introduction of these species into the country, as well as to manage those that are already occurring in the country. Why are permits issued? We issue permits to regulate invasive species in the country. And in accordance with Chapter 2 of our regulation of AIS, Alien and Invasive Species Regulation, these species are divided into 4 categories. We have what you call Category 1A species. Those are the species that must be combated or eradicated. And then we have what you call Category 1B species. Those are the species that needs to be controlled. But I won't be dwelling much on Category 1B species because it talks to invasive management plans as well as compliance. So my colleague, who I assume will be speaking after me, will be touching on that, will be elaborating on that. And then we have what we call Category 2 species. Those are the species that one require a permit in order to possess them, or to breed with them, or to trade or translocate them. So those are the species that one require permits. And we always emphasize the fact that once the permit is issued, the landowner or the owner of the permit must adhere to the permit conditions at all the time. And what stands out is that they must always make sure that the species does not escape or spread out of the area or the location that is stipulated in the permit. And then we also issue permits for research. This is in accordance with Section 25 of Alien and Species Regulations. We issue permits for research purposes. We usually issue permits for national zoological parks when they apply for identification, as well as it's usually for identification and educational purposes. We also issue permits not only for category 2 species. We can also issue permits for category 1B if it's for research. Like for instance, we usually receive application for water hyacinth where the applicants are controlling water hyacinths through the use of the biological control agents. So we also issue permits for research purposes as well as for biological control programs. This slide here shows different categories that I've already spoken about. So as you can see here, most of the category 1A and most of the category 1B, most of them are prohibited in terms of, let's say, possession, importing to the country, breeding, growing, multiplying, or trading between 2 or more than 3 people. That is because these species are already a problem in our country due to their high level or degree of invasiveness. So, in contrast to category 2, they are mostly prohibited or exempted. So for category 2, we make it possible for people to possess the species only through the possession of a permit from our office. And then we also have category 3 species. Those are the species that one doesn't require a permit. However, there are certain restricted activities that are prohibited or exempted. So this slide here, in summary, it just shows different categories and the kinds of restricted activities that are allowed and those that are not allowed. And this slide here is just a continuation of the previous slide that I was talking about, talking to different restricted activities as well as the associated categories. The species that need permits, out of 568, yes, 568 listed species, it's only 118. It's only 180 category invasive species that require permits. As you can see here, the plants represent the largest taxa that need permits, and that is because, like I've indicated before, we are sitting with a problem. We have a problem of drought in South Africa. Therefore, the only water bodies that we have are being challenged by these invasive species. They tend to colonize water bodies, and therefore they are posing a threat to our water security. So that's why most of the plants are listed, followed by mammals, reptiles, birds, etc. So, but then all in all, it's 118 out of 568 listed species. I'm sorry about that. In terms of risk assessment, according to Section 65, subsection 2, and Section 71, subsection 1, it states that a permit can only be issued after prescribed assessment of risk on biodiversity has been carried out. So in short, what we are saying is that we can only issue a permit after an applicant has conducted and completed a risk assessment. And this risk assessment can be conducted in accordance with section 16, 17, 18, and 19 of our regulation. So, risk assessment framework in terms of section 61, subsection 1 can only be conducted by an expert or environmental practitioner that is registered with SACNASP. Yes, we usually require that for new introduction or for when one wants to breed with species that are problematic in a particular province. So that's when we emphasize the need for comprehensive risk assessment, because already that species is problematic. But mostly we require it for new introduction if that species is not known to be occurring in the country. And then we have what we call a guideline of information required for category 2 species. So this one it's just an abridged version of full risk assessment. So this one, unlike risk assessment, unlike comprehensive risk assessment, can be complied by the applicant themselves, because it's just a set of few questions. So what we ask from the applicants is that they answer the question honestly, because that enables us to get a picture of the kind of facility where you'll be putting the species. Like for instance, if you are applying for rose ringlet parakeet, or if let's say you are applying for boa constrictor, by answering this question, this guideline for information required, we are able to get a picture of the kind of cages that you are using to keep your bait, as well as the reptile, because the last thing we want is for that species to escape. Yes, so there are two: it's comprehensive risk assessment and a guideline for information. So this is just a summary or an abbreviation of the comprehensive risk assessment. So it's much easier as compared to this one, because for this one you have to get an expert, you have to hire an expert to conduct a full risk assessment. So this forms part of the entire permit application form. Alien species permit application process. This is when an applicant is applying to introduce a particular species into the country, be it a bird, be it a reptile, mammal that is not that is not known to occur into the country. So what we do is that the applicant will obviously identify species of interest, obtain application form and risk assessment guideline, lodge application, the risk assessment to the department, and upon the receipt of the application, we verify the documents to see if they meet our requirements. We then send it to ASRAP, which stands for Alien Species Risk Analysis Review Panel. So we usually give this panel of experts 40 working days to respond and to go through the application and advise us. So after going through the application, they sent the report back to us. We then consider the recommendation, we reach a decision, and then we inform the applicant whether his, or her application was successful or not. And this process, it takes up to 60 working days. And this is for listed investors. This is for those that are usually already occurring within the country. So the difference between this one and the previous one is that instead of sending it to ASAP, we are working together with the 9 provinces. So we usually send it to the province where the application is full. We send it to the province, and then we give them 20 working days to respond with the inputs. So this is usually the full application, the pre-inspection report. We send it to the province and await their inputs, where upon we consider the inputs, reach a decision, and then notify the applicants of their application. This here is just shows the status of what we received during the financial year 2021-2022. As you can
just adjust the zoom for you a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Okay. As you can see here, during the financial year 2021-2022, we received 385 applications. These applications were for bands, mammals, birds, the reptiles, and they were for possession, breeding, translocation or transport, as well as selling. And out of these 385, we managed to issue 394 permits. And these permits, they're usually for possession, breeding, and selling, which is 1 permit, and a transport permit is separate. And it's usually for 3 months and 1 year, whereas the possession, breeding, and selling is valid for 5 years. So this is just the case what we managed to achieve during this financial year. And this is what we charge for what we do. The amount is not that much. When you want to import to the country, the application fee is 200. And then for all restricted activities, it's 100 rand per species. We sometimes experience a situation where, let's say, an applicant wants to apply for 10 parakeets. And then they will ask you that, since I'm applying for 10 parakeets, does it then mean that I should pay 1,000 since it's 100 rand per species? So that is not correct. It is charged per species, not per specimen. So even if you are applying for, let's say, 100 beds, the amount will still be 100 rand. Even if you are applying for 200 beds, the amount will still be 100 rand, as long as you are applying for 1 species. It only change maybe to 200 and 300 if you are applying for 3 different species. So it remains as 100 rand. Even if you are applying for possession, breeding, selling, and transporting, that 100 rand covers all those restricted activities, because now you are applying for 1 species and not different species. And then for renewal, it's 50 rand. So renewal is, let's say for instance, if you have a possession, breeding and selling permit that is expiring next year in 2023, let's say 2023 June. What you need to do is to apply next year around April, 2 months, yes, 2 months before. And then when you apply, that's when you attach proof of payment of 50 rand together with a copy of payment that you will be renewing. And then, yes, we also charge 50 rand per species, for appeals. Oh yes, and yeah, that's it. This is our contact details. We are based at 14 Loop Street in Cape Town. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We now have an opportunity for any questions that need to be asked. We have 2 roving mics at the back, so if anybody has any questions with regards to permitting, the process, the costs, anything that was unclear with regards to... Come ladies, come.
One here.
We have a question in front. If everybody would be so kind as to and tell us who you are and where you're from, it would be nice.
Hi, I'm Louisa and I work for AIS Africa. It's an environmental consultancy company. So I just have a question with regards to the permitting, obviously. So when a client already has invasive species, for instance, on their area, do they still require a permit when they're in the process of trying to eradicate it, or do they only need a permit when they decide to keep the invasive species and do nothing to get rid of it?
Okay. Yeah, it depends on the duration as to how long is it going to take you to eradicate that species. Like, for instance, we do come across such kind of situation where a landowner will say that, no, I was advised by the compliance team to apply for this species because it's category 2 species. But then the problem is that I don't want it in my yard. And then I'm planning to eradicate it. I don't want a permit. But then if you can, let's say, eradicate it overnight, yes, you don't want a permit. But if you have a program that will take you something like 3 years, then you need a permit while you are working on removal of that species. That is just to keep you safe and to be on the right side of the law.
Question in front.
Good morning. My name is Kaikile. I'm from Link Environmental Services. We are in environmental consulting. My question is, okay, so we once applied for a permit, and then the comment from the department was that we needed a hepatologist to sign off the risk assessment. Now, I only know of one hepatologist and he couldn't help because he's part of the advisory panel. Do you have a database of hepatologists, or if not, how would you advise me go about that situation?
Yeah, well, I don't think we do have a database for hepatologists.
No, we do.
We do? Oh, okay. Yeah, so yeah, we can always advise on that. Yes, because I was thinking so
Okay, so maybe that query just needs to be redirected at the office.
I was speaking under correction. Okay.
Question at the back from the lady. Please stand.
Morning, everyone. My name is Vinolia Mongwe, and I am from Eskom Tech Industries. So what I wanted to ask is that we have a pipeline that we are running, and we have category 2 aliens that we have on that line, and it's species that have been there for a very long time, and it looks like they were planted by the farmers. So if we apply for a permit, can we apply for a permit to actually keep those category 2 aliens on a farmer's land.
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, is this something that you are currently controlling?
Currently we have an alien resource management plan that we are currently having, but because of the density of those aliens in that area, we were actually thinking of applying for a permit to keep some of them, and then some of them we can remove.
Yes, no, you can still apply for a permit while controlling them at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you
all
can
right.
still apply for a permit.
Good morning. Beatrice from Jeddah. I have some few questions. The first one is regarding the application. You mentioned that there's fee involved in the application. If the application is not successful, what happened to the fee that the applicant paid for? And the second one is when you apply, how long does it take for the permit to be issued or for the official to go out and do an inspection?
Okay, answering the question of the fee, remember the fee is for processing the application. So irrespective of the outcome of the application, even if the application was not supported or was rejected, we do not refund because that money was for processing the application. That's if I understood your question correctly. So we don't refund. The money is for processing the application. And the process takes up to 60 working days. So when the application is complete, when it's supported by the risk assessment, the proof of payment, certified ID of the application, we conduct pre-inspection, we send it to the province, we give them up to 20 working days to respond, we await their input, and from there we take a decision. So we always try our level best to make sure that we issue the payment within the 60 working days time frame. But let's say, for instance, if you apply for a transport payment, if you already having a possession payment, so it's something that can be issued even within 2 or 3 days, because we don't have to go through those processes of having to conduct pre-inspection or having to apply to send it to the province for input. So that can take a few days, even if you are renewing, because you already having a payment.
Okay, can I just make a follow-up on it? When the application is made clear to the applicant to say when you apply, it doesn't mean that when the application is not successful, the money that you pay is for processing the application. And then the last question is, remember every financial year, the fees goes up. Is it notifying to the government gazette to say the 1st of April, this is the percentage that's going to be implicated into the application?
Yeah, but as far as I know, I think maybe my colleague can help me, if maybe, I'm not sure. But as far as I know, our fees have been increased since 2016. It has always remained as 100 rand. So it hasn't increased with the new financial year. Are you answered, sir? Okay, thank you.
While we wait for the lady to ask questions, maybe important to clarify something. If you have a permit for possession under category 2, but you want to move that species, you also need to apply for a permit to move it. And that would say, for instance, be an animal in a zoo which needed to be moved from one place to another. 2 different permits.
Good morning. It's Kathy Zerafas from Tshwane University of Technology. So when we think about the effects of alien invasive plants in particular on our biodiversity, and that South Africa is
one of the top 3 biodiverse countries in the world, and a water scarce country, do you think what you're charging for permits is adequate? Also, let's think about a country like Australia or New Zealand that have far less important species than us, that actually have a no-go policy. So I think that's a question we all need to ask ourselves here, especially the environmental consultants, because sometimes we might be tempted to not really think about the issues and rather just think of the interests of the client. And they also suggest that we really should consider that the risk assessment practitioner should not be appointed by the client. The client should pay, but actually the department should decide who does the work, because otherwise you are never going to get an objective piece of work coming out. And the friends groups that are here and people that are volunteering their time to remove these alien plants will actually never succeed in their efforts.
Okay, no, thank you for that.
Thank you so much for those comments. Not often somebody asks for a government department to put their fees up. That's what you have the gentleman in front, and then we'll move on to our next presenter.
Morning, my name is Nick from the World Zoological Association. I've got a few questions, won't be long though. Okay, so question number 1 is we often get questions that a reptile, Burmese python or Colbert python is not on permit. Now they've heard about the permit, they want to get rid of it. Can you get those animals onto permit? Or what do we do with those animals?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
We can contact it for snakes that's not on permit, so they've never done the permit process. Now they've heard of the permit process, they want to get rid of them.
Okay.
Is there a way to get them onto permit, or do those animals get euthanized, or what do they do with them?
Okay, so those permits are listed as category 2 species, they need permit. Yes, they can still apply for permit if they want to keep them.
Okay, so they're not be fined, anything like that. They can apply and you'll go out and issue the permit. That's what I'm asking.
There's no one fine.
They never knew about the permit system. They just heard about it. I know it's 5 years later.
Oh yes. It's not. They can still
apply.
Yeah, no, they can still apply for permit.
And then if we breed animals, category 2 animals on permit, we apply to put those babies onto our permit. So that's a 3-month process, 60 working days, yes?
Yes.
And then to sell, that's another 3 days on top. That's a 6-month process in total, maximum. It's 60 days plus 60 days. I breed them, they hatch, they go into my permit. I sell them, that's another 60 days.
No. Remember, if you already have a permit and you've been issued with a permit for possession and breeding, there's a condition that talks to recording the numbers, to recording the birth and the death, the natalities and the mortalities. So you don't have to apply for a permit every time you receive new babies. All you need to do is to update your register so that when our inspectors come to inspect your facility, you are able to show them that no, when I applied for a permit, I had 6 work restrictors, but now I'm sitting with 12. And then you show, you present the register to them. You don't have to apply every time you receive a new baby.
The last question, it's not on permits, I don't know if I'm overstepping, but it's on me, I'll sit down and I'll keep my mouth shut. Is there a reassessment process for animals that's on permit? So, for example, we've done the thing for Burmese pythons, 5 years later it's a reassessment. For some reason decide that they will die in Gauteng, freeze them out in the wild, so we'll lift them out of the permit system.
Or you mean amendment of the policy or the legislation in terms of the, yes, there's always a room for that.
Okay.
There's also a room for that, yeah. Whereby other species were previously listed as category 2 species, but then now they are no longer listed as category 2 species. They are category 1A, 1B, or they just be removed from the list. So there is that room for amendment of the policy.
Okay, is that something we engage with you with, or do we do an additional real risk assessment and then approach you out of that?
No, there's a public participation for that when it happens, to allow stakeholders to provide their inputs. there is room for that.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, sir. Then we're going to move on. Say thank you very much. One last question from the back, then we really have to move on.
Hi, it's Zelo from Liberal Landscape. I just want to find out, on your permit application fee, we did one project on behalf of an SOE. So I heard them saying there was an exemption for SOEs not to pay that fee. Is that correct? Because we are stuck there from the client saying that they are exempted.
Yes, that is absolutely correct, sir.
So the SOEs are exempted from paying the fee?
There's a provision for that. Yes, they are waived in terms of the regulation. Yes, so that is correct.
Okay.
And the research institutions.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. At least that clarifies that. Thank you so much, Mpho. Let's give Mpho a round of applause and let everybody knows where we stand.